Hey everyone, how you doing tonight? Welcome to another Thursday night live show here at the Smoking Studios of the Rocky Mountain Cigar Show. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have an unbelievable guest. I can't believe I finally was able to get Al Micallef to come on the show. I've had Dan on several times. We do Micallef March Takeover where they planned the women's roundtable shows and the whole show. It's absolutely fantastic. And now I get to have the man, the myth, and the legend himself, Al Micallef. But before we bring on Al, we've got such an exciting show tonight. Let's go ahead and thank our sponsors. So these are the sponsors that this show would not be made possible without the help and support of these absolutely fantastic brands. So please, if you see these brands in your local shop or you're online and you see them, please purchase them, buy them, support them. BAMFcigars.com, ROCFcigars.com. In the description below, you'll see a 15% off promo code for both BAMF and ROCF cigars. We've got Kristoff Cigars, Karen Berger Cigars, Sagrado Cigars, New Air Humidors. In the comments below as well, you'll see a promo code for New Air Humidors. I get nothing for these promo codes. They're literally just there for the great viewers of the show. Micallef. Now, as tonight is a sponsor-driven episode, there will be no scrolling ticker across the bottom. It'll just say the Micallef brand, but Micallef, big sponsor of this show. We've got Big Sky Cigars, Cornell and Diehl pipe tobacco. We've got La Aurora Cigars. Tonight, I will be drinking the Axe and the Oak bourbon. We'll get into what cigars we're smoking here in a minute. And as always, big shout out and big thank you to Abe DeBabna over at Smoking Cigars, as that is the name of the studios, the Smoking Studios. Big shout out to Steve Saka as well. We've got the What Are You Smoking Tonight segment coming up, sponsored by Steve Saka. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and bring in the man, the myth, the legend, Al Micallef. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and I'm doing just fine.
Fantastic. I tell you what, before we jump into all the fantastic discussion that we're going to have tonight, let's start by throwing up our first and only segment of the show, which is the What Are You Smoking Tonight segment. So, Al, I will let you say yours first.
I'm smoking the Micallef Black, the Toro, that we brought out at the show this year. And I think it's the finest cigar we've ever built. And I put the cigar up against any cigar in the entire industry.
Well, you're not the only one that thinks that way. Just look at how fast they're funneling off the shelves. Like I told you in the green room, I think my wife and I are 3 or 4 boxes deep on that. And then we are about to get our next box of this. This is our date night cigar box. Micallef is definitely a big part of our daily smoke. So that black is... You guys knocked it out of the park. You made a cigar for under $10 that crushes cigars that are double that price.
Yeah, Dan and I and Amanda felt strongly, especially in these economic times, to give the industry a real strong value in a cigar for under $10. We felt we just felt like we owed that to the cigar smokers to give them a product that's superior yet doesn't break the bank.
Absolutely. And tonight I am smoking the Herencia. Love this cigar. I only had a few blacks left, and if I would have smoked one, my wife would have probably killed me because we got to order more usually before I can have any more if there's only a few left because that guarantees she gets them. So thank you so much. Steve Saka is sponsoring the What Are You Smoking Tonight segment from Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. So, Al, let's kind of jump in here and let's go all the way back to the very beginning. Now, I myself am trying to be an entrepreneur. All right. I have this show. I started a charity. You guys very graciously support. And we're actually with your company's help, we were able to raise $30,000 for a wounded warrior to get a dog, which was absolutely fantastic. And then I started a bacon company. Now, in your 80 years of life, you've probably heard a lot of people say, I want to start a company. And at this point in time, your eyes kind of have to roll back in your head when you hear that, probably, because you're like, all right, put your money where your mouth is. What gave you that drive as a kid, as a teen, as a young adult, to want to actually be an entrepreneur and make it work?
You know, this I really enjoy this question. I was not a very good student as a young man. In fact, I didn't read till I was over 12, 13 years old. I would have to fake it, but my parents, they were ethnic. They were from Europe. They always pointed to my cousins and saying, this cousin's doing well at school. He's doing so much better than you are. And after you hear that over and over again, you got two ways to go. You try to do better, or you let that destroy you. Well, in my case, it just made me badder and badder. And I would say to myself, every time I heard that, I'd say to myself, just wait till it really counts. Just wait till I get out into the business world, and we'll see who wins this game. And that was my motivation. And so, I made it through high school, had a little bit of college, but at that time I was already in. I had a twist lounge when I was in high school, a dance lounge, and I made $30,000 a year in 1958.
That's a shit ton of money back then.
Yeah, a ton of money. My dad worked every day as a laborer or worker at Ford Motor Company. He made $5,000 the same year. So, I mean, First of all, with his background coming from the island of Malta, he really felt like to earn that much money, I must be doing something illegal. So he took me to the Catholic priest, and I had a conversation with the priest, and he came out of the meeting and said to my dad, you know what, just leave the kid alone. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he's going to be a real success. And that was, that really is a true story. And that gave me the motivation to continue to do what I wanted to do.
Wow. So you got the priest on your side. Your dad he can't say no to that, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, he just, in that culture, the priest was like the psychiatrist. Anytime you had an issue, you either went to confession or you went to talk to the priest. So that's and actually the priest talked me into playing in their summer baseball league. That's all that came out of that conversation.
So you get this bug, you're making oodles of money in the 50s. What was your first success as an entrepreneur once you became an adult?
This is, every kid does this. I opened a lemonade stand, but I kind of took it one step farther. I'm a big believer in innovating and really understanding the business that you're in. So I'm in Catholic school. We got out 2 weeks before the public schools. So I set up lemonade stands on routes home from the public school. So I had like 5 different stands going on at once. And I would just pedal my bike around and bring supplies to the different stands. And so then I took a big cut of the revenue, and the kids that ran the lemonade stands got paid more money than they possibly could and doing anything else. But I thought, why let a group of kids walk home and I didn't have a stand there? So I made it a point to become multinational, I guess, or multi-city.
Multi-block.
Right. Multi-block. That's exactly correct.
So right now, did you realize, so love them or hate them or not, one of the things that I've always heard Trump say, as far as, and this is not to get political, this is just an example, as far as when people asked him, what's your success? And he used to say years and years ago, I hire those that know more than me where I don't. So you learned at a very young age what the value of bringing in employees to kind of grow and expand. So did you realize that that's what you were doing, or did you just kind of fall into it?
It was easy for me to do that, because when you lack a lot of skills, like, for example, your reading wasn't great, you can't spell your way out of a paper bag. You really had to motivate people in a way that they'd want to work for you, and you have to fill the voids that you had in your skill levels. Sure. And fortunately, I've been able to do that, and that's been really the secret of my success in all the businesses that I've started or been involved in.
Okay, so you did your lemonade stand. Now, where did it start to you where it became real? Where now you started an LLC, you started an S Corp, you started a business, now you're building. What was that, and how old were you?
I had always a very strong curiosity about how business ran and how business operated. And my first real big winner, and I had a zillion small little things I did, but the big winner was the dance lounge. And I learned a lot of lessons in that dance lounge. I learned that you have to be the face of your business, and you have to be personable and enjoy the people that are your customers as well as your employees. And I also learned that everything in the world is not honest and upright. At the dance lounge, I always would end up more people than the fire marshal would allow in the building. And so I found out that there are certain things that you have to do to keep that fire marshal happy. And so I began to learn that you have to understand the good things about business, and you have to understand a bit of the underworld, and not be part of it, but just know that it exists and figure out how you can maneuver around it,
navigate through it. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So when did the silicone side of the business, when did that start?
Well, what happened was at that time I was working for General Motors, and I went through the General Motors training program, became a supervisor. I was the youngest general supervisor in that plant that I was in, and I was on the third shift. And looking at the seniority of the guys that were on the first shift at the same level, I figured I'd have to be there 20 years before I got onto the first shift. And it was always embarrassing, because working in the third shift, I'd have to have my dates home by 10:30, and then I got to go to work at midnight. So I figured this isn't going to work. And one of my best friends in school, our family owned a rubber company, and I had worked for General Motors for 2 or 3 years at that time. Learned a lot of good practices, a lot of skills at General Motors. So when they had a problem in one of their businesses, and I volunteered to go work for them, take my vacation, and go work for them during the vacation, and help hold this thing together till I figured what they were going to do. And I ended up going and never went back to General Motors. So that was the rubber company. And from that point on, I learned the rubber business. And that's when we made it profitable again. Then they decided they wanted to sell it. And the people that bought it, they were one of our really good customers. And they said, we'll buy this company, but if Al doesn't come with this company, we won't buy it. So I was able to negotiate a small ownership in that company. And so I stayed. And from that point on, I continued to acquire more and more stock, and ended up owning 100% of the company, which was called Detroit Silicone Rubber Company at that time. And then we changed it to JMAC.
So do you attribute it? You tell the story as if it was perfect time and place for you, and it just kind of happened. Is that the reality of it, though, or did you kind of fight your way in, and you just kind of tell it like you just happened to be at the right place at the right time? Does that make sense?
Well, that's a very astute question. At that time, there were some people at the company that were there that were not leaders, but they were there a long time, and there were people that had to be convinced that they're going to work with me or that they couldn't stay. And so once I began to learn the business, I decided the guys that got with the program stayed, and the guys that didn't had to leave. And when you do that, you have to have the skill, obviously, to make sure that what they were doing, and you had to do it as well as them, or you had to make it better. And so it took me a while to get complete control of the company, and it just grew from there.
So we have JMac, and how old were you when you took that over? Complete ownership.
When I complete ownership, I probably was 28 or 29.
Wow, I feel like very lazy right now. I'm 38, and you're running a company at 20. Like, gee, that's incredible. But that's what it doesn't seem like you ever saw your limitations to where you could go. And in fact, it seems like what you learned at a young age was to bring in people around you that could assist in you. It doesn't seem like you go at it all on your own. Meaning you were willing to bring in people for the lemonade. You were willing to always ask for help or bring in those that knew potentially more or a different strategy, right?
Those are all interesting comments. You should, when I sailed Transpac, which is a race from LA to Hawaii, I asked the guy who raced that race several times, and I said, "What do I do? I want to do this ocean race." He said, he says, you get on your boat and you untie the lines and you head towards Hawaii. That was his advice. It's the same thing in business. You know what you got to do? You've got to have confidence in yourself. You have to be a leader, and you've got to get people to believe in you around you. And then you just go do it. You're never, ever, ever ready for the opportunity that you create or that's sitting there in front of you. you just got to go do it, and eventually you'll get a handle on it. And eventually, then you begin to think of how can I make it better? I'm here. I've got a handle on what I'm doing. How do I make it better? What can I do different to make it more successful? And we did that in the rubber business big time. We did many, many. If you talk to anybody in the industry, in the silicone industry that's been around for a while, they'll tell you that JMAC was the most innovative company in developing processes and developing things that made them more successful.
So I'm just trying to unpack, because you brought up a lot of great points as far as it doesn't just happen. You still have to make it happen. You still have to rely on your own intuition and kind of fake it till you make it. So Al, what is your strategy to getting people to believe in your vision?
Well, it's something that, it's inherent in me to treat people with all the dignity and respect I possibly can, and make them feel, because I do feel this way, make them feel every person that you encounter, in most cases, have good points. You've got to build on those, but you got to make them feel like they're part of the success or part of what you're doing. And you probably don't know this, but my headquarters company, the person that runs my legal department's been with me 49 years. My personal assistant, Sue, has been with me for 48 years. If you go through my whole headquarters, the lowest seniority is 17 years. In this time in the business world, to have long-time loyal employees is absolutely amazing. And they are so protective of me, and I of them. And there's no personal problem they can have, or there's no issue that they can have that I'm not willing to help them with. If they're the kind of person that's loyal, hardworking, and caring, then I should be the same way towards them. So if you're going through a divorce, you have some serious financial issue, your house gets blown away by a tornado, you can count on me. I'm going to be there to help you. And you build that kind of loyalty. And you don't do it to everybody, but other people see what you do to special people, the people that care about you. And it just builds on itself.
And what you made a very great point. I'm 38 years old. Most of my friends are incredibly successful inside of the sales world on a professional level, but the longest I think they have stayed at their job is like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of faux pas to stay at a job 40 years anymore. But when you were coming up 50s, 60s, 70s, that's exactly how it was. My dad was at the same job for 20 plus years. My granddad, 40 years. You, 50, why do you think that mindset is going away in business as the worker?
Yeah, I just think that our society today has this instant gratification, and people want that quickly. You hire a kid with an MBA, he wants to be the president of the company in 2 years. And most of them fail because you know what, you cannot give enough credit to longevity and learning. I always say the first business you start and you're successful with it, if you expand that one level, you're successful. You go to the third level and you begin to take it for granted that you know everything, and that you're hot stuff. That's when you get your butt handed to you.
How important is it to fail in success?
How important is what? I'm sorry.
How important is it to fail in success? Meaning, does that make sense, that question?
Well, it didn't come through clearly.
So, is failure needed in something to be successful? Meaning, if somebody doesn't fail, do they really know what success is? And if they don't fail, can they really truly be successful by learning from what they've done?
Everybody says this, Ryan. Everybody says you learn far more from a failure than you do from a success. You know what? Failure, if you don't fail, you're not doing anything. I mean, you have to make mistakes, and the secret of making mistakes is make sure that what you do, no matter what business you start or what expansion, is that if you fail at that, and it doesn't kill you, just make sure that you create a situation where you can survive a failure. And you'll learn a lot from failing. You also learn that, don't put all your eggs in one basket and think you can't fail. We all can fail, and the problem, the thing that's frustrating about failing is that the next person that you try to stop from having that failure, they don't listen most of the time, and then they fail.
So that is what I would consider to be a mentor. And we're going to 100% get into that very, very closely. But I was wondering if you would you be willing to share with us a time where you had a failure and how you got through it?
I'll be honest, Ryan, most of my failures have been small enough that they, they weren't catastrophic. Because when I start and pick a new avenue, I try to do it within the shape of our current businesses, so that if it's successful, then I spin it off, and if it's not, the current businesses actually paid the damages. And so, if you want me to, I mean, I've had failures. For example, I built plants for Ford Motor Company to make a patented item we have. And they had a gas tank fire in a automobile, and their plastics plant that built plastic gas tanks, they shut it down. So they took all the plastics business I had for them, they moved it to their plant, and I had an empty facility. So I had to figure out how to back out of that, right? But those are the kinds of things, I've never had a failure where I started something and put tens of millions of dollars or millions of dollars into it, and I just had to shut it down. Almost any business that you're in, if you know enough about it, you can twist it and tweak it and change it till you get something that's successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to touch here a little earlier in the show, but I want to touch here on mentors, because you had said a few minutes back, if you fail, then you try to stop the next person from having the same failure, and oftentimes they don't listen. Now, my mentors will tell you that, my younger years, those who've been with me for a long time will tell you that oftentimes I didn't listen to them until I had to, and then it was painful at that point because it was everything I didn't want to hear but needed to hear. So, Al, what is your definition of a mentor?
Mentors are people who have the skill to mentoring, or the background, I should say. The problem is they can't stop with advice. They begin to get into the business and get deeper and deeper into the situation. And that's not what you should do. A mentor is a person who, in my opinion, discusses the issues, not afraid to tell the individual the truth. You know, you can soft pedal it. You're not doing him any favors. You can say, listen, I'm going to tell you, if you don't do this one thing, this business is going to fail, and let me tell you why. And nobody wants to hear that. The people that hear it and do it are people that are going to be successful. The people that say, oh, no, I can't do that. I've got these obstacles. I can't get the city to agree to this. You know, a lot of different things. But I mean, especially today, doing mentoring in the cigar business with stores. You know, people have certain ideas, and I have a strong feeling of you have to have a very special facility to be successful only selling cigars. You know,
Yes.
you have to have some other income streams within that building or that business to be successful. Because when you're selling $10 items on average or $12 items, and you're paying rent and employees and for raw material and all the costs that we have today that I didn't have when I started originally, you got to develop some real rich revenue to cover all those costs.
That's very true. That's very true. So as somebody that's probably mentored a lot of people throughout your life and your career in both probably personal and business alike, how important is it to have a mentor that tells you all the stuff you don't want to hear? You had mentioned that it's a requirement. Why is that a requirement?
Because you're not doing anybody a favor mentoring them, telling them everything's going to be okay. You got to say there are a lot, you know, business. There are lots of traps out there, as you know, and there's lots of areas that you can get yourself in trouble. If somebody tells you ahead of time and you listen, you may still do it, but you may be able to navigate around those issues that you know are going to occur.
So if somebody came up to you and said, Al, I have somebody that I'm looking at and I would love for them to be a mentor in my life, what should I look for in somebody that would make a bad mentor? Meaning somebody
Make
that
a
I should
bad-
stay I should stay clear
Okay.
from.
Someone who's all talk, you know, we in Texas we call it's all hat, no cattle. You know, I mean that's a term, and if you think about that, it's very poignant. You want
Yes.
people that have failed, you want people that have succeeded, and you want people that understand, you know, what you're going through. They'll be helpful. People that, you know, college. I got back from Harvard about 2 years ago. This is a great story. Okay, one of the case studies we had was theoretically the best restaurant in the world in Spain. They never made any money. They created all these incredible dishes. You know, they used all this foam. They did a lot of things that made it unique. If you ate there, it took you a year to get a reservation. The food came out, maybe 20 courses. A chef would sit down with you, talk you through every course. They never made any money. The question at Harvard, with Harvard professors who made outrageous amount of money consulting, who never built their own business, was how should we raise prices? And I thought, you know what? That's a dumb approach to this. There's another answer. And the guy would. This is the end of the course. The guy wouldn't call on me because I was a pain in the ass. So I had my hand up like this, and the guy behind me had his hand up, and the professor called on him. And he said, I really don't have anything to say, but I want to hear what Al has to say. The whole class clapped. So I was really in trouble. But what I said is, they got to look at this. They're not a restaurant. They're an experience. We got to look at where the other revenue is. I said, how many reservations do they take a year? Says they take 5,000 reservations a year. I said, great. How many people want reservations? They said 50 to 80,000. And only 5,000 get in. I said, you know what? They charge $5 to every person that wants to register to get themselves in line to dine there. If they don't, obviously, if they don't get to dine, they lose their $5,000 or they lose their $5, but at least they got in line so that, that they know at some point, if they keep paying $5, they're eventually gonna get in to eat in this restaurant. If you take $5 times, 10,000, 20,000 people, all of a sudden it becomes a very profitable situation.
Well, very much.
They never thought about that approach to it. They never thought about what do I have that's of great value, and that is the only thing you have of great value is good food that goes away in one afternoon. But you also had a reputation that tens of thousands of people want to eat at your facility.
And
now
paid.
That is right. That is a real asset. Mm-hmm. You got to understand what assets. They don't have to be the typical asset that you and I see in a restaurant. It's got to be something else.
No, absolutely. And I just got to say, when you said you were at Harvard a couple of years ago and you were in the business class, instantly I was like, oh my gosh, that's a real life version of Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield. Exactly. You just completely like shut the professor down. It was like, that's stupid. That doesn't work in the real world. Like,
well, I don't know if they'll ever take me back, but I made a lot of good friends in that classes.
Hey, if somebody inside the Micallef universe, you should throw up a Back to School cover with Al's face over Dangerfield's. I think that would be hilarious.
I'll tell you one other story about Harvard that you'll enjoy. 25 years ago, I went to their mini MBA program, and it was a canned groups. You'd have a study about a particular company or group of companies. And at that time, Lee Iacocca was taking Chrysler over, and everybody at Harvard was down on him. I met Iacocca a year or two earlier, and I said, hey, this guy's a winner. I said, I'm going to take his side of this argument. Well, after I did that, I had a little Jewish guy come up to me and say, Al, I've got a real problem, and I wonder if you could help me. I said, well, what's that? He said, I have a warehouse full of fake fur in a variety of colors.
Like coats?
He said, yeah. He said, I sold it to a few retailers. They made, they added to clothes with fake fur. He said, but I've got a huge inventory. I can't sell it. And being a smartass, I was half not serious. I said, well, what else can we do with this? I said, how about if we start covering toilet seats and backs of toilets with this fake fur? I said, it kind of create another market for it. I don't know if you remember, but back 20 years ago, you'd go into your grandmother's house and she had a cover of fake fur and a toilet seat cover. And that was this guy. And he sent me massive gifts every Christmas for about 15 years. And he finally died. I have more sets of golf clubs. I don't golf. He sent me everything he could think of. But that, so that's, that's the kind of thinking that an entrepreneur needs to have to get his butt out of trouble, because believe me, you'll get in trouble. So you've got to look at what's a real asset that I have. I mean, you're sitting there, you have an audience. I'm talking about cigars. You know, I've got sponsors. What are assets do I have in this genre that I built? What are assets do I really have? And how can I take advantage of those? That's what, you know, and that's how, you know, most successful entrepreneurs, as you know, that are billionaires today, are guys that fill the niche that no one else thought about, or a different process for disseminating information, you know, all those kind of things they've done by finding there's a need for this, or I've got this skill, and how can I market it?
No, absolutely. It literally all of them. The guy that created the pet rock was worth millions, and all he did was pick up a rock, throw some googly eyes, and draw a face on it, you know? So what separates in your mind a wantrepreneur from an entrepreneur?
I think a true entrepreneur thinks differently than any other individual. I think they look at a problem or an opportunity kind of ass backwards. Says, you know, they've got to be extra creative. Have you ever heard my $2 story?
No, but I would love to.
Okay, so when I moved my manufacturing plant to Texas, I went from being an idiot to a genius in 3 months, because moving a manufacturing plant out of Detroit, moving it to Texas, all the costs were dramatically less. Same customer base, same sales, went from losing money to making really good money. So after 1 year, I had the Weatherford Industrial Plan, a group that was formed in the town of Weatherford, or the city, to bring industry in. They built me a plant that's a long story, but they built me a plant. I leased the plant from them. We were very successful. Within 2 years, I had to double the size of the plant.
Wow.
So I went back to the industrial board and I said, hey, look, we need to add another 40,000 square feet. And now this board was made up of a bunch of good old boys, a bunch of ranchers. You know, there was maybe one real businessman on that board. And they decided that they felt very lucky that they didn't have an empty building that they had built for me. So they really didn't want to take another chance. So I said, now, how am I going to change their mind? So I paid $140,000 payroll in $2 bills. I covered the city of Weatherford. That time had 9,000 people. Covered the city with $2 bills. It didn't take those boys very long to understand the economic impact we had on that community. Within 3 days, they approved the expansion.
Wow. Wow.
So, I mean, there are things that you can do to solve problems, change people's mind. You just got to think out of the box.
Yeah, that reminds me of again, not getting political. We'll move on to the cigar side of things here in a sec, but that reminds me of one of my favorite business wrenching stories, which is Trump, when he was building Trump Tower in New York, and Tiffany's owned the block and the air rights above all the buildings. They would only allow, I think it was like 3 or 4 stories, and he wanted this 15, 20 story building. So he went over to Tiffany's for a meeting to get this worked out, and he showed him 2 plans. He said, this is what I want to build. Beautiful, what it is now. And then this is what we're going to build if you don't let me, because my lawyers, see those guys over there? It's already mapped out. You can't absolutely not stop this from being built. And it was like the ugliest, gaudiest thing in the world. So he goes, either this one gets built or this one that you have no say over gets built. Up to you. And then he left. That was the whole meeting. And he said, but the way the story goes is by the time he got back to his office, Tiffany's legal was on the phone going, sure, go ahead, build Trump Tower.
You know, I'll tell you, that's a fabulous story. I was building condominiums in Red River, New Mexico. Now, this was not my idea, but this was my partner's idea. We were very successful with the first phase. We wanted to build the second phase, but there was an old gas station that cut out a piece of our property, and we needed to buy that gas station. So the guy was being a jerk. He didn't want to sell it to us. He owned the game parlor in Red River, New Mexico. And I don't know, you remember when those parlors were built with all the pinballs and all those different kinds of machines?
Oh, yeah.
Well, Barney Chapman, after the guy would not sell us that little gas station, which was, believe me, it was nothing. Barney put up a big sign on the property that we own that's coming soon, the world's biggest game parlor. And never said a word. And a month later, the guy came to us and sold us the gas station. But we had to promise not to build the game parlor, which we never had any intentions of doing anyhow.
Now, sometimes that shrewdness is what it takes. And throughout history, everybody always says, oh, the shrewdness of Standard Oil, Rockefeller, or the shrewdness of the railroad barons. It took that shrewdness to make what they made. And there was a time and a place where that was needed. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. You know, there are a lot of people out there that you're going to deal with that have no foresight. They also don't understand unintentional consequences. I'll give you a quick example. They were building a railroad in Texas. They got to Weatherford. The city of Weatherford, the people that ran the city would not allow them to work on Sunday. Weatherford was going to be the big railroad hub in this part of Texas. The railroad people said, hey, if we can't work with these people, we have to go somewhere else. So they just ran that rail line right through Weatherford, right into Fort Worth. And Fort Worth now became the big railroad hub for this part of Texas. And it's got just under 1 million people today.
Yeah.
Very fastest growing city. And Weatherford's, got 13,000 people. So, you got the decisions you make, you have to kind of think of the consequences of what you say and what you do. How will that affect how will that affect, the business in the future? Is there anything you can do to make that better?
Al, I sit here and I just listen to you talk about you at one point build condominiums. You had an a lemonade stand. The JMac. You've had your hand in so many things, and we're going to talk about the race and the sailboating here in a sec. But what drives you to continue to create? Why so much success in life? There's nothing left to prove. Everybody around you sees your success. Why start a cigar company? Why continue to create? What drives you at 80?
What drives me is curiosity. I smoke cigars and very curious about the business.
Okay.
So, you can read books about the industry, you can talk to people, but you don't really understand. I don't understand what you do until I got into what you do. the cigar business or all the other businesses that I've started, I had a tremendous curiosity, and I also love building. I mean, if I buy a ranch that's derelict, I love rebuilding that facility, making it look good, making it productive. Once I get that done, I'm happy to turn it over to somebody else. But I like taking something that's awful and turning it into something that's beautiful.
So you like the creation, you like the building aspect. So
Yes.
you get into the cigars. What made you go with the Gomez Sanchez family? What kind of steered you into that?
Well, I knew these guys when they built cigars for us at Silverleaf. I knew they had, in my opinion, had very quality product. So you don't get into an industry, in my opinion, that the people, your competitors or your friends in the industry, have had 90, 100, 120 years history in building cigars. I mean, that's a whole different ballgame. If I was
Yes,
building metal plates, it would be a different story. You know, you stamp out a metal plate, that's all it is. There's no history behind that, but
sure.
there's a tremendous history, knowledge, and so the Gomez Sanchez family, to me, seemed to have that passion. Um, I'll tell you what really convinced me is we're sitting there and somebody handed Adele Gomez a cigar. He said, "Hey, try this cigar. What do you think of it?" Now, most people would say, "Oh, it's okay. It's not bad." He said, "This tastes like shit." So what that said to me is, I mean, it said, "I'm not afraid to tell you. I can recognize that it tastes like shit, and I certainly wouldn't build anything like that." And I thought, you know what? The guy's honest and has a passion for what he does or what his family has done for the last 100 years. So I said, you know, and dealing with Cubans, you know, you have to take them out of that Cuban mentality. Even though they hated Castro, they hated the system, but they still have a mentality that people should give them stuff because that's all they knew. And I had to take them from can you buy me a house so I can live in it to I'm going to earn and do a great job so I can buy my own house. And so, you know, that took, and they're there now. They are hard ass businessmen today. They're good people, and they won't make crap, and they won't. They're not fad people. I mean, I know a lot of people talk about this tastes like berries, tastes like tobacco, this tastes like leather. You know, I mean, their attitude is this is a bunch of shit. This tastes like this is a damn good cigar, and it tastes like a cigar. It doesn't
Yeah.
taste like leather. Okay. Um, I spend Amy and I sit there and smoke cigars, and she goes, "Can you taste anything a walnut?" Or I said, "No, honey. It tastes like a damn good cigar." That's all I can say.
So as you're now starting this venture into the cigar world, you've got a great family, the Gomez Sanchez family. Now they start developing your cigars. What is your next move in the creation of this cigar business? What does Al do next?
You know, the hardest thing is to develop a brand name that people recognize. When they walk into that humidor, you want them to walk over and pick up your cigars. I've heard about it. I've smoked these cigars. They're fantastic. I want to be a Micallef. And I told you about, I mean, I don't know if, when we decided that our goal was to support brick and mortars, we had to figure out a way that people learn about Micallefs, if not from the magazines, they have to figure out a way that they can learn from bought Micallefs for other reasons. And that's what started our ambassador program. And we probably have over 10,000 ambassadors now.
Oh yeah, 12, 13,000. My wife's number is like 12,000.
There you go. And so we're trying to change the curve a little bit. I mean, all the successful people out there, that I really respect, they're all advertising, but our studies showed that the penetration with magazine ads is under 2%. People will look at a magazine, the top 25 has some impact, people want to try it. But if you look at all the cigars that are rated, people, number one in the survey, if your friend says, hey, I'll try this cigar, you're going to try it. Number two, if you're at a store, you're friends with the owner or the tobacconist, he said, hey, we got these new Micallefs in, you need to try this. Number two. 3 is social media, and 4 is print ads. Now, that was a study we did at TCU, at a university. Now, the only flaw that I can see in that survey was the fact that if you continue to see Micallef in all the magazines, in all social media, then I think it helps build a brand name. I don't know that it helps you. It creates an environment where you may try that cigar, but it takes the whole circle of items and not just magazines.
Yeah, it's the entirety of it. So, so you got the family, now you start getting the word out. So Al, I'm going to ask you a question that I don't know if you've ever been asked this before, but what would you say to somebody that says Al's not being real? It's a hobby for him. The guy's worth oodles and oodles. Why should I take Micallef serious? It's just another person creating something they want to smoke.
Well, we've definitely heard that. And, here's some rich guy who wants to play with this. Only thing I can say to him, look at, I've had 40 different businesses. I don't play in any of them. I want to be successful. I mean, you probably know what the financial commitment is to do this right.
Yeah.
You're buying tobacco for 24, 25. You're paying for that. You're buying fields. You got tobacco that is being stored, and then you got tobacco that's being aged. Then you got cigars that's being built. The amount of revenue is staggering. If you're a guy that gets pissed off and leaves your cigar company, and you decide you're going to start your own cigar company, you better think twice. If you want to do it right, it takes a ton of capital. We also have, I don't know if anybody matches us, but we have 1 million cigars in inventory. Thereabouts. It goes down a little, it comes back up again. Because I don't believe in back orders. When I'm selling product to Ford Motor Company, I can't tell them, hey, you can't have that transmission. It's on back order. So, I feel very strongly about, you want to piss me off? Tell me we're out of one stick and that we haven't planned for it. No, I feel very strongly, if you're a store owner, you're working your butt off, you're selling Micallefs, and we call and say to you, hey, it's 3 months before we can get you more blacks. That's not good. Number one, somebody's going to buy somebody else's cigar. You're going to lose that revenue. But also, it's just not, in my opinion, it's just not right not to be able to take care of your customers. Now, that could be a bad strategy, but that's my strategy.
No, that's, and you could tell where your other businesses influence this? The whole we're out of stock. Some manufacturers in the cigar world think that's a great thing, kind of, to be like, oh, it's so popular, it's out of stock. Your mindset is totally different because of the other businesses that you've been in and been involved in, and that wouldn't fly, being out of stock.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like our little restaurant in Alpine where my ranch is. I went in and I said, "Hey, I'd like the fried chicken." They said, in the beginning, they said, "Oh, we're all out of fried chicken." I go, "What?" I said, I grabbed him by the ear, in a nice way. I said, "What's that across the street?" He said, "Well, that's Porter's grocery store." I said, "Good. You think they got any chicken there?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Then get your ass over there and buy the chicken." I mean, to me, it's just logical,
Oh man, that's awesome. So of the 40 companies that you've run, is this the first one that's actually carried your name so front and center?
Yes. Yes,
so
absolutely.
why is this company different? Because when you marry somebody, you give them your name, and you were married what, 50 plus years?
Yeah, 50 years.
So that's a big deal. So what made you give this your name?
I thought that in this industry, the product to a lot of people, like the Padron family, and this is the pride in their family. And they are the Gomez Sanchez family. They don't want to make crap because it reflects on their family. I figured if we're going to do this, we got to do it right. And I don't want the Micallef name out there to fail. So we've done everything we can to try to live up to what our family represents.
So this company truly is your baby. I mean, your kids have your last name, your wife had your last name. This is literally as far as all the companies, this is a company that you love and cherish immensely.
That's absolutely right. Because all the other companies, and I love them all, but they all, if I had to write, they're all for sale. Okay, this company is not.
All right, everybody. I'll put up Amanda's email address, and if anyone's looking at buying any one of Al's companies, they're all for sale, but the cigar company is a no.
Absolutely. Hey, Amanda, honey, I lost the picture.
Oh, we can still see you.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, we can at least still see you.
I just got a blank screen here.
No worries. It might have just closed on you. Maybe the screensaver went on.
Yeah.
So Al, one of the things that I hear in reading, I love reading a lot of books about successful people. I love understanding their life and hoping to kind of mimic some of the traits that they have. And one of the things I've always come to terms with successful people is they always talk about their daily routine, their morning routine, how they start their day. So Al, as absolutely the most successful person I've ever had on this show, what is your daily success? What is your daily routine for success?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's changed in the last few years.
Sure.
Not now. I mean, first thing I do is I get up. If my maids aren't coming, I make my bed. I think that's very important to me because you start off with taking something that looks like shit and making it look better, right? Then I'll drive to JMac. I'll go to the cigar building. I'll sit down with Amanda and Dan for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. We talk about all the issues in the business, what we can do to make it better, we talk about our plans for the future. I generally go to lunch with 4 people that I've had work for me for all plus 40 years. I mean, these girls were all, Farrah Fawcett type girls when they first came to work for me. They're all have families, they're all mature, they're all smart. It's great. Then I'll go home in the afternoon, or end up at a cigar lounge around the city. That's pretty much what I do until they ask me. I mean, our salespeople will ask me to come and do events. And one of my rules is be happy to do event, but I want to be there for 2 or 3 days. And I want to visit potential customers that we don't have. Don't take me to the people we already have. I mean, I'll be happy to go to there, shake their hands, be there, let them know I'm around and we're there to help. But I want to meet people that are not Micallef customers.
So, as I'm so curious, I've been in sales over 20 years at this point. I've had more than my share of failures in sales and significantly more successes, which is why I'm in sales still. I always tell people, if you really want to just constantly be stressed and feel like you're beating your head against the wall, go into sales. Because it's always, what have you done for me lately? So Al, what is your strategy? What is your selling strategy when you walk into a lounge that's not a Micallef customer?
My strategy, basically, my opinion is to make a friend before you make a customer. So, find things that you have in common, chat about them, make a friend. You'll get a feeling, is this the right time to ask for the order? Or maybe it'll be the next time. But that's basically my approach to it. We have lots of programs. I mean, lots of different little twists, and to find something a program that I think fits what they're doing, then introduce that program and tell them and then be able to quote successes from other stores that have done the same program. During COVID, this is amazing. During COVID, because we have these ambassadors, we would have a online event, but we also blasted that event out all over the country. And our ambassadors would call in and order product from that store in Ohio, and they lived in Memphis. Because obviously, when there's an event, there's always a better deal on cigars. So every single time, which amazed me, is if they sold $4,000 that day at their store, they sold almost the equal amount on social media.
Wow. That's impressive. That's very impressive.
And so, for example, to go back to what we were talking about, during that period, I'd be at the customers and we say, we'd like to do an event. And he goes, well, COVID. So no, we want to do a social media event. And so if they were open, some of their local customers would come in, but they got a big boost from people around the country. And it's a few foreign areas, but mostly the United States.
No, that's COVID did so much bad, but it really boosted the cigar industry immensely. I mean, I had the opportunity during COVID to interview Dennis Prager, which I'm sure you're familiar with who he is.
Absolutely.
And when he came on the show, first off, it was amazing because here's a guy I've looked up to that's helped shape my personal politics, my views. And I've always known that he smokes one cigar a day. And so I asked him on the show, I was like, so you still once? He goes, no, I'm like 3 or 4 a day now. He goes, I never leave the house. We turned this into a smoking room for me now. So COVID did a lot. So, and the industry's kind of balancing itself out right now. But I want to kind of ask some questions around family dynamic. I love Amanda. Amanda's one of my favorite people in the industry. My wife loves Amanda. She's amazing. What is it like to work so closely with family? Give us the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, I'll give you the good is Amanda's twice as smart as I am. She's got incredibly good instincts, and she is a incredibly hardworking person. You know, it's a person that, you know, you don't have to say, you know, you're leaving at 4 o'clock every day. It's just the opposite with Amanda. She's just fantastic. The bad is that one day I said to her, we were arguing about something, and I said, Amanda, do you ever think you're wrong? She goes, no, I never think I'm wrong. She said, I'm wrong sometimes, but I never think I am. But we're very much alike, and we both. I told her future husband when he talked to me about marrying her, I said, this is going to be a different conversation than you might envision. I said, I'm going to give you all the pitfalls and what not to do. I said, one thing, I said, is don't argue with her. You'll never win because she'll never quit. And I've learned that. So at some point, I say, okay, you know, that's the end of the discussion. The good, you said the good, the bad, the ugly. There's really no ugly. You know, she's just a super person. We're a lot alike. If that could be the ugly, that's the problem. We're very much alike.
So who wins in a back and forth?
Oh, I quit. Amanda wins. You know, I mean, this. You know, you got to understand reality. You know, she just wins. She's not always right, but I make sure that they understand my position, and that if they go ahead and make a mistake, they've got to live with it. If they're successful, they were right and I was wrong. So, you know.
So that brings me actually perfectly into my next question. At what age did you kind of start to let those reins go? And today, how much of the day-to-day are you actually involved in?
I would say this happened. I started slowly 3 or 4 years ago, but I never had a top senior person that I trusted the way I trust Dan and Amanda. I never have any evening or morning or vacation anxiety. I very much feel very comfortable with what they do. And Dan's a strategist. We had some issues with customers, not our fault, not their fault, but he handled it in such a strategic way that we won and they won, and we would have never done it that way before. So he is amazing mind. And he's so good with data that he could manage our manufacturing businesses, and he can find the flaws in some of the activities that we do and begin to correct those flaws. Yeah.
Yeah, Dan, you know, Dan is very, Amanda's very smart. How, so it was in your late 70s where you decided to kind of step back. So now, Al, what does Al do when he's not Al of Micallef Cigars or Al of JMac? Let's get into the racing. Let's get into the sailboating and the flying. So what are your hobbies?
One of the things I need to point out is one of the things I've done my entire life is I worked hard, but I always took time to do the things I wanted to do. Like when I wanted to race formula cars, I took time to do that. When I wanted to do rally cars, I did the Trans Amazon, which is a rally from Cartagena, Colombia to Buenos Aires. When I drove Formula 3, I wanted to hunt. So I've hunted in Africa for over 2 years, not all at once, but different month here, month there. I wanted to sail. I sailed, I raced a lot. Then there was a race in California that I wanted to do, called Transpac. It's a race been going on for 100 years, LA to Hawaii. I bought a boat, refurbished the boat, and did that race. I wanted a ranch, which also turned into a business. We were one of the largest. We had 14,000 head of cattle at one time.
Of course, it turned into a business.
Yeah. So, had 5 ranches. Ran that business for a while. Really liked that lifestyle. Flew helicopters, flew fighters. I mean, I did a lot of things that I wanted to do.
So let's talk about the Trans Am drive. How long ago was that when you did that?
Did what?
The drive from Buenos Aires.
Oh, probably 15 years ago.
And what was that like? Were you giving it all she got? Were you kind like what? Walk us through, why did you want to do that, and what was that experience like?
Well, I don't know. I just wanted to do it. The experience was life-changing because I can't remember the exact number. I think 5 people were killed during that race.
Oh, wow.
Probably, I would say 15 to 20 to 25 people were hurt very badly. When you got up in the morning to start the next leg of the race, you didn't know whether you were coming home in the evening. We had Paris-Dakar rally drivers. One of them was crashed and paralyzed. We had in the motorcycle division, we had motorcyclists in Colombia that went off the road into the jungle. I don't know if they ever found his body. I mean, it was a life-changing experience. I got to Kiki, Chile. I didn't eat very much, and I was taking extra steak Excedrin. Burned a hole in my stomach. Lost 5 or 6 pints of blood. Ended up in the hospital in Chile.
Wow. That is a life-changing experience.
Yeah. Had great nurses in Chile, but it was, I never finished the race.
So what was first, the sailboat, the sailing, or that race?
I hesitate because I've been in and out of things, but the major sailboat racing, the driving was ahead of that first.
Okay.
The car races were first. The formula car races was first. Then I decided to start flying a whole variety of jets. So I had that came in between, and then I moved on to the sailboats.
So you bought a boat. Did you have to hire a crew? Did you know how to sail before you did that race?
Yes.
So you had to hire a crew, right?
Yeah, and you don't just go out and hire a crew. You hire the best sailors in the world. I had sailors from Australia and New Zealand. One of my sailors is a guy that was president of North Sails, and we did the race. Some of them had done the race before. I bought a boat called Merlin. You can look it up. It won this race like 5 or 6 times.
Wow. So throughout, my gosh, you've really lived an incredible life, and you've done a lot of things. When you look back on your life, what is the one experience that you would relive over and over and over?
Well, if you don't talk about family and the birth of your children,
Yes, I'm talking about stuff.
yeah, then you need to talk about training with Top Gun pilots to do air combat.
Wow. Okay, so all right, that's kind of threw in there. I didn't know that. So how do you even get that opportunity?
Well, somehow I got hooked up with these retired or Top Gun pilots that were buying military jets from Europe. And so I started flying with them for fun. And then I ended up buying 2 fighters and we ended up flying, in air combat, and just did that for fun.
Wow. That is incredible. Again, like I can't even imagine what it would be like to be up in a fighter jet, and you flew one?
Oh yeah, continuously. And they all had lasers, so that if you shot down the other one, then it would kick off the smoke. The smoke would come out of the aircraft.
So wait a second. You played laser tag with fighter jets. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
what you're telling me?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Everybody, please comment if they would like to play laser tag with fighter jets. I know I would. I've done laser tag with a little shitty vest on, and you're up there in a $30-40 million plane playing laser tag. That's incredible. That is awesome.
The interested. So the Top Gun guys, they trained you exactly like they were trained. I mean, the briefings ahead, the briefings afterward, the good things, the mistakes you made. But the funniest thing was every time it starts out with the checklist of things that they were going through. It started out with aggressiveness. and they go, well, we don't have to talk about aggressiveness. You almost killed us 3 times today, and so yeah, they were good guys.
That is awesome. Buddy Warren says Top Gun tag. I've seen them. Terry Parkins said I've seen them flying, practicing shooting flares at each other in the air. That is absolutely incredible. My gosh, Al, what an amazing life that you built for yourself. And the one thing I've heard throughout the constant of this is you worked your ass off for everything. You were able to have the visionary to see something in the market, to jump on it, and then you grew to where you are the epitome of boys don't ever grow up, their toys just become more expensive. Like, that is awesome, and
Yeah.
I commend you. So I've got a few questions here to end the show. What are Al Micallef's rules for a successful life?
I think the one rule that I try to live by every day is treat the people that are around you with all the dignity and respect that you can, and make them feel if they're the janitor or the garbage truck guy or president, treat them the same way. Treat them so that they feel good about themselves. And also in that genre, there's no reason that you can't compliment strangers and make them feel good for the day. I do that
Absolutely.
continuously. I just think if I see something good, if I see a waitress who's running her butt off, I'll call over to the table and say, "Hey, I've been watching you. You do a really great job." It costs nothing, but that person's going to go home and feel better about what they do.
Absolutely. I completely agree. What is your favorite size cigar?
Even though it's not in vogue, I love Churchill's.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little longer cigar.
Yeah, I love Churchill's. And also, one of the things I want to mention,
Yeah.
I think this is important.
Sure.
For people that read all you can about this books on the success of people. Do not read, in my opinion, self-help books or business strategy books, because they will, unless you really understand what they're doing, they could really screw you up. I'll give you one example. I fell in love with a book written about business units. Within your company, you break out all your departments into business units and treat them all like individual businesses.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is you create so much competition between businesses that you lose within that business. You lose the teamwork that should be in any business. And it took me 2 years to put it in place, and it took me 5 years to get rid of it.
Wow.
So, be very careful when you think, oh, that's a great idea. That's a great, read all you can about people that are successful, then determine who you are and what your strategy is, what you can learn from their success, and don't emulate them. Develop your own, think about it, make it part of you, but don't fake it.
Yeah, and to your point, kind of in the same line of what you were saying of don't emulate, make it your own. Starting out in sales, when I got my first really big sales job at a marketing firm, he became a mentor of mine, but he was my first instructor at the company, and he would always tell me, there's nothing that you're ever going to do in sales that hasn't been done. So don't try to don't try to make the wheel new. Just build your own collage using other people's ideas and make it your own. And I think that's what you were getting at.
That's dead on. Absolutely dead on.
So, what is your favorite cocktail to mix with a cigar, whether it be coffee, drink to mix with a cigar?
Chocolate malt.
Really? I think
Yes.
that is the first time I've ever heard that.
Chocolate milkshake.
Okay.
Nobody does malt anymore, but chocolate milkshakes. I had everybody at Silverleaf doing that. We all gained 10 pounds. We had to stop doing it.
When you're gone and off the planet and all your companies move on, how do you want the cigar industry to remember you by?
Well, two things: honest, innovative, and fair. That's it.
Okay, that's very well said, to the point. If you could go back in time, not Jesus or God or anything, if you can go back in time and have dinner, a lunch, a meal with any historical figure and you bring them a Micallef cigar, who would it be and what cigar would you bring?
It'd be Winston Churchill, and I would bring them the Experienza La Crema.
Okay. Now, fun story. You probably heard this about Winston Churchill, but I don't know if it's officially been confirmed, but I heard rumors that when he used to smoke his cigars, he would actually give cigars out to people around the table that he was negotiating with. He would put a toothpick down the center of his. So as he was smoking it, he always had the longest ash out of anybody sitting at the table.
I love that. You know, a joke about our family motto. This is definitely a joke, but our family motto is, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. So, you know, that fits that pretty well.
Well, Al, if you were able to live anywhere in the world and only have one Micallef cigar to smoke, where would it be and what cigar would it be?
It would be New Zealand.
Okay, beautiful
country. And it would be a Micallef Black.
I love that black. I tell you what, man, that black is going to be, I feel, Micallef's legacy. It is $8, $7, $8, $9, depending on your state, your taxes. It, like I told you before the show, that's one of my wife and I's favorite cigars. I mean, that's always in our humidor. So one last question will end the night. How important is it to always be innovating inside of not just your business, but your life?
I think it's probably near the top of things you better be doing. Because if you're not innovative, you know, my personal motivation saying is, if you're not making dust, you're eating dust. Which means is if you're not leading that pack, you're going to have some problems. And I feel very strongly about being innovative and creative. And in our business, I mean, one of the things we did during COVID is we have a program called the Ultimate Inventory. Do you know about that program?
I don't.
If you were a retailer, they had you shut down. Your customers could call you. And if you didn't have a particular Micallef in stock, or you needed a particular kind, we would send that cigar or that box to your customer directly and bill you 30 days later.
That is very innovative.
And during COVID, honestly, we've had people that said, Al, you saved my business, because we couldn't sell a cigar out of this location. So we just got on the phone and talked to our customers, and you delivered that product the next day to them. He said, when they first told me that, I thought, well, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but they'll swear to it.
Amazing. And I lied. I have one more question. As somebody that was married over 50 years, I've been married since 2015. So
you better get that right.
Yeah, right.
You better get that right.
No, a little bit of a brain fart here. What, other than remembering dates, what are your keys to a successful and long-lasting marriage?
Well, normally I'm asked that by women. And what I tell women is that your only job, other than the normal things that women do, is to make your husband your hero. I said, if he thinks that he's your hero and you make him feel like he's your hero, the chances of you having a bad marriage totally diminishes. Because the only reason why he wants to go somewhere else is because somebody made him feel more like a man, or somebody made him feel more about himself better. If you do that job, you'll have a successful marriage.
Amazing, amazing. I got to give a quick shout out to Bruce Stark here, who actually did the back to school Al Micallef picture off of the movie title for Rodney Dangerfield. So
that's fantastic.
So Bruce, if you can, I'm sure send that over to Amanda. I'm sure Al would get a little kick out of maybe hanging that up or something.
We'd love that.
So Al, thank you so much for spending your night with me. My gosh, this was such an honor. I really hope you had a great time, and I hope this interview was something different than you've done in the past.
It absolutely is, but I need to tell you and thank you for asking great questions and really understanding what I was saying because of your background. But I very much appreciate what you've done. Very much, Ryan. Thank you very much.
Oh, Al, thank you so much, man. This was a bucket list to have you on. Like I said, I'm such privilege to be able to call Amanda and Dan close friends. And you know, you have such great people around you. This was an honor to have you on. Hopefully everybody had a great time on the show tonight. Let's give it up for Al. Fantastic show tonight. Thank you very much to all the fantastic sponsors that make this show possible. Micallef being one of them. BAMF Cigars, ROCF Cigars, Kristoff Cigars, Karen Berger Cigars, Sagrado Cigars, New Air Humidors. Again, Micallef Cigars, Big Sky Cigars, Cornell and Diehl Pipe Tobacco, La Aurora Cigars, Dunbarton Tobacco Cigars, and we cannot forget the name of the show, or the name of my studios, the Smokin' Studios, Abe DeBabna over at Smokin'. And let me tell you guys what, if you're looking for any Micallef cigars, do yourself a favor, jump over to smokin.com. They have the entire lineup of Micallef cigars, and if you get a ticket to TGS this year, you may have the opportunity to run into Al. You just may be able to meet the man, the myth, and the legend that we had on the show tonight. So Al, from the bottom of my heart, love your cigars, love your family, love the business, and thank you so much for coming on the show. And to everybody watching, until we see you again, smoke what you like, smoke as often as you can. Have a great rest of your week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, sir.